Hello, yes, this is Safety Condensate Platform. I am Alakpa Imogene Ufuma, the sole proprietor of Safety Condensate Platform. I would like to talk on fire safety. Fire safety is a very, very important topic that cannot be overemphasized in any environment. Just follow me as we go on. Now, what is fire safety? Basically, fire safety is all about measures put in place to prevent the occurrence of fire and also for the protection of lives and property. Whatever controls you put in place, whatever measures you put in place to ensure that fire doesn't start, to ensure that lives and property is safe, it's all about fire safety. Fire safety basically has two safety systems involved. You have the active fire safety system and you also have the passive fire safety system. Let me start from the second. Passive fire safety system. What do we mean by passive fire safety system? Passive fire safety system basically has to do with the controls or the measures you put in place to ensure that you reduce the spread of fire by the time it starts, or to also delay the movement and the flow of fire from one point to the other. So whatever you put in place, whatever you set up, whatever you infuse in an environment or on a material to ensure that you inhibit or you delay the flow or spread of fire from one point to the other has to do with passive fire safety system. Now for active fire safety system, we are basically talking about what you install to ensure that fire is extinguished either automatically or manually. Whatever you install to ensure that it gets activated to put out fire manually or automatically is what we mean by active fire safety system. Examples: if you install an automatic fire suppression equipment system, by the time fire starts in such an enclosure, the system you've installed will be activated automatically to put out the fire in such an enclosure. Okay, now if you also install or you mount portable firefighting systems, okay, or firefighting equipment, these firefighting equipment or systems, by the time you pick them up and you activate them manually with a view to extinguishing or putting out fire, it's called an active fire system. All right, those are some of the examples of active fire safety systems. Those things you put in place, those things you install to ensure that they get activated either manually or automatically to put out fire in a view to protect lives and property is what we call active fire safety system. What is fire? Fire has various definitions, but suffice it to be this definition by me: fire is the burning of materials to produce flames or light, what you see visibly, to produce smoke, those are particulates that you also see, to produce gases that you cannot see, but usually very, very toxic, and heat you also cannot see but feel. So wherever there's a fire incident, that means materials are burning or getting burnt to produce either flames, smoke, gases, and heat. In fact, most of the time, the whole of these four factors are inclusive in the product of fire. Where there's fire, you usually see flames, smoke, gases, and heat. So fire basically is the burning of materials to produce flames, smoke, gases, and heat. Now, general cause of fire. Basically, wherever you have fire incidents or wherever you talk about the occurrence of fire, there are three major factors involved. And these are fuel, heat, and oxygen. Fuel, heat, and oxygen. Generally, we call these the basic or the general cause of fire. Okay, you always have fuel, heat, and oxygen. All right, now oxygen basically is a gas that you cannot see with your naked eyes. Okay, but it's abundant in the atmosphere. It's everywhere. You basically need oxygen also to survive, to breathe. Okay, so it's everywhere. So wherever there's fire, there's always oxygen as one of the factors involved. Heat. Heat will always be generated, and heat also is usually a driving force to start off fire. Okay, those are the two things that relates to heat. Heat will always be generated whenever there's a fire, and heat is usually involved in the ignition or the starting of fire. Fuel has to do with the materials involved in the burning. Okay, now fuel basically has to do with the three states of matter. So it could either be solid, could either be liquid, and or gaseous in state. Okay, so the material involved, which we call fuel, could either be in the liquid state, the gaseous state, or in the solid state. So, but basically, the material involved is usually tagged or called fuel. Okay, so where these three factors come together, there is usually what we call fire. Okay, so in other words, a material or a fuel is subjected to a particular temperature, okay, which we cannot tie up to heat. So any material that is subjected to a particular temperature that is equal to the ignition temperature of that material in the presence of oxygen will result into fire. Okay, I come over it again. Any material which we call fuel that is subjected to heat or a temperature that is equal to the ignition temperature of that material, okay, in the presence of oxygen will result into fire. Okay, now one of the factors I talked about wherever you have fire incident or fire is heat. Okay, so heat, it can be tied to what we call source of ignition. Okay, so usually fire does not just start off on its own. Yes, you have the material that we call fuel. You also have oxygen in abundance or everywhere, but these two materials cannot start off fire. Okay, there must be a third factor which we call the heat factor or the ignition factor, so which we also call the source of ignition. Okay, so that third factor is the heat source. Okay, so when the heat source comes into or comes in between the fuel, that's the material that is involved in fire, or that will get burnt, and oxygen that is in the atmosphere, where you have the third factor coming in between these two, okay, and causing or creating a link or a chain between these two, you always have fire. Okay, so that heat, or the third factor we call the heat source or heat, okay, is what we call the source of ignition. Something must ignite, something must start off the fire, because those other two factors, fuel and oxygen, cannot start off fire on their own. All right, so the sources of ignition, some of the sources of ignition are these: smoking, electrical equipment, heaters, and housing. Now, if you check very well, these items I just stated, they are all associated with heat. If you have a burning cigarette or a burning cigar, okay, the burning end of the cigar or the cigarette will always have heat, okay, it will always have heat, so it's a source of ignition. So if that heat content or the heat aspect, okay, comes in contact with a material, so you subject that material to a particular temperature that is equal to the ignition temperature of that material, fire starts. Okay, and that is why it is advisable, if you are going to smoke, or anybody is going to smoke near you or in any environment, it is better smoking is done in a controlled situation or a controlled manner. Okay, at least you must have some level of water that will douse the burning end of the cigar or the cigarette. Okay, at some other places you must have some 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 level of waste bin that can accommodate the burning ashes generated from smoking cigarette or smoking cigar. Okay, because the burning end will always bring about some level of heat that will trigger or ignite any material. Okay, now the second factor on source of ignition has to do with electrical equipment. Electrical equipment always generate heat. Electrical equipment does one or two works. Okay, so in working they also generate heat. All right, now if you are having materials close to this electrical equipment, okay, and this heat generated always come in contact with these materials, if these materials get subjected to this heat over a time or after a while, by the time these materials ignition temperature equals the heat that is emanated from this electrical equipment, there will always be a fire incident. Okay, then the other aspect of electrical equipment is you do not overload an electrical point. Just like I said earlier, all electrical equipment always generate heat. Now, if you also overload electrical points or power outlets, you will add to the capacity of the heat that is expected to be generated from such outlets or points. You add up to it, so it goes beyond the rated capacity. So if you overcharge or you overload a particular power outlet, a particular electrical power point, you will be subjecting that power point to overheating. Okay, so the heat that will be generated could ignite any material that is within the closest distance to it, and that will result into fire. Heaters also these are equipment also that generate heat to ensure that the environment is warm enough for people to be comfortable in. Okay, so where you are making use of heaters, you must also ensure that you comply with the basic safety rules, okay, so as not to have these same heaters ignite some other materials and then resulting into fire. Arson basically, which is the last point I have here, arson basically has to do with deliberate act or deliberate action by individuals, okay, to start up a fire. All right. Classes of fire. Now, we've talked about fire. We have various classes of fire, and it ranges from classes A to F. As itemized here, you have for class A fire, this involves free burning materials. Free burning materials in the light of paper, wood, plastics, etc. So basically, the fuel content of this has to do with the solid state of matter, okay, for class A. So you have paper is termed fuel, okay, wood is termed fuel, plastics termed fuel, but they are all in the solid state of matter. So where you have class A fire, we are talking about these free burning materials in the state of solid matter, okay, these free burning materials getting burnt, okay, that is what we mean by class A fire. Class B fire involves the liquid state of matter, okay, basically the liquid state of matter that is burning. So any liquid or flammable liquid involved in fire or involved in fire basically has to do with class B fire. So flammable liquids such as petrol, alcohol, okay, some chemical solvents, okay, kerosene, diesel, okay, these are all flammable liquids and they are termed class B fire, okay, because they are they are flammable liquids involved in the fire incident. Okay, for class C fire, basically this has to do with gases that are burning, okay, so flammable gases, okay, flammable gases burning is termed class C fire. All right, so for class D fire has to do with the chips of metals that are burning. So any fire involving chips of metals, okay, is termed class D fire, and these ones are not usually common in the home environment. These are basically common. These are basically common in 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 in, in the manufacturing environment, in the steel manufacturing environment, steel processing environment. Okay. Now for class E fire has to do with electric fire. So any fire involving electrical equipment basically is termed class E fire. Okay. Class F fire, which is the last class of fire, has to do with cooking fats and cooking oil fire. So any fire involved in cooking oils and cooking fat is termed class F fire. Okay. Common causes of fire. Common causes of fire. Now, these are some of the causes of fire. They are very, very common. You have gas leakage from cooking gas cylinders as a result of defective cylinders, hoses, and valves. You have defective or faulty electrical points in appliances such as extension boxes or leads, sockets, switches, TV sets, air conditioners. You have improper disposal of burning ends of cigarettes. I talked about this earlier. Ignited cooking oils while cooking, lack of concentration and sleeping while leaving food materials on the gas cookers, microwaves, etc. This is very, very common. Burning candles from heat sources left on or close to fuse. These are very, very common causes of fire. Okay, let's move on. Now, how do we prevent fire and how do we protect lives and properties from fire? So we've come to fire prevention and protection. Basically, these are some of the things you have to adhere to, observe in preventing and protecting yourself from fire incidents. Okay, housekeeping must be very, very, very good. Okay, you must have a clean and tidy environment. Okay, where materials are clearly stacked. Okay, are clearly stored. Okay, in places that are very, very far from sources of ignition. All right. Then the other thing has to do with you ensuring your exits are free from all obstructions. All right. And your exits must be accessible. Okay. So let me just go over some of the list items I have on this list. Don't block fire exits. Don't block call points or extinguishers. Be very observant in the smell of gas leaks, fumes from burning electrical points. Take care when cooking. Ensure to check round and switch off all electrical appliances when not in use. Install fire protection systems and ensure periodic maintenance or checks. Be trained on the use of basic or portable fire extinguishers and adhere to fire evacuation procedures. Okay, so if you do observe or comply with these simple rules or recommendations of mine, we will do ourselves a lot of good to prevent the occurrence of fire and protect our lives and property from fire incidents or accidents. Okay, installing fire protection systems, very, very key. Fire protection systems, some of them has to do with this portable fire extinguishers. Okay, so if you mount them at strategic points in your home, your work environment, it becomes very, very handy for you to access and to activate in the event of fire, because fire is best put out or extinguished when they are very, very small. Okay, the other aspect of fire protection system has to do with you installing or your organization installing. Many a times this has to be driven from the design stage, where you install hydrant systems, fire hydrant systems. Okay, you can install dry risers, you can install wet riser systems, you can install fire hose reels and protection equipment. Okay, then the other aspect of fire protection system has to do with the detection and alarm systems. Okay, where you install smoke detectors, you install fire call points that could be activated, and the detectors also that could be activated in the event of fire. So once they're activated, the alarm goes off and everybody's alerted. Okay, these fire protection systems are very, very good. You could also install or mount some other fire safety systems in the kitchen. Okay, there are special fire smoke detectors for the kitchen. Okay, there are several fire protection systems, and they are very, 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 very important in preventing and protecting lives from fire incidents. The other thing has to do with evacuation procedures. Know your evacuation procedures in your work environment, at home. Okay, ensure that your exits are known and accessible, not blocked. Okay, all right. So we found these tutorial of mine very educative. Okay, I would implore you to click on my channel, put down some comments, and I will be grateful and glad. Thank you so much.